Welcome everybody to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. And I'm really excited because we have Russ Johns in the house.
Oh, I'm humbled, and thank you so much for the honor of joining you today, Dr. Ruth. I really appreciate it. And, we've been going back and forth, and we finally got to have an actual conversation. So thank you. All the gratitude.
No, it's just such a pleasure to talk to you. I know Chris Ross connected us, and he has lots of amazing things to say about you. So I'm just really excited to talk with you and really hear your story and help, hopefully your story to help the listeners and people that are struggling, that there is a way through, and you can help people on the other side of that darkness that you may have been through for whatever reason. So really excited to have you here on the show. Thank you.
You bet.
So this show is, as you know, is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. So the first question I love to ask all my guests is, what does optimal brain health mean for you personally? And you can relate this in the context of your story, your personal journey.
You bet. The brain health to me, and this is from years of experience of seeing both sides of the equation, is balance. And reality is that the same brain that is used to motivate us to get out of bed is the same brain that stops us from getting out of bed.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that, they don't think about what they're thinking about. They just work on the emotional side. And so for me, it's balancing, some of the emotion and some of the reality that we have to live through in order to survive and thrive.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's really important that we pay attention to both of those elements, which is your emotional drives and your emotions and the drivers behind those emotions, and then also being cognizant of your thoughts and your thinking patterns and all of the motivational aspects or lack of motivation that comes with it, depending on how you're showing up that day emotionally, and what's pulling those emotional strings and what's pulling the thought patterns. So I think it's really important, and often, as I'm sure you know, is we don't take that time to check in with one or t'other as much as we really could do, and we can often fall foul of our emotions, or we block them, or we fall foul of our thoughts, and our thoughts can drive our emotions, positive or negatively. And from a brain health perspective, we talk about automatic negative thoughts. And this is like your background operating background program that's running in your mind that you may be not consciously aware of, that stops you from getting out of bed in the morning, because you're telling yourself things that maybe are not true. And like you say, is looking at the reality of the situation as well as what's going on inside our mind.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you would bring that up, because what is it that allows us to, same individual, same experience, one day just feel devastated and just unable to move, and the same brain, same person, same experience allows us to achieve amazing things at some point in time. And it's kind of, I've always been curious about that, because some of our self-talk just kind of stagnates us in a place that doesn't do us any good. It doesn't serve any purpose. Yet we still have that little voice inside our head that's really mean. I mean, we wouldn't say it to our best friend. Why do we say it to ourselves? So
yeah, I know, and I completely agree. And it's a huge topic, the thoughts that we have. And I know, a lot of people, that many of my clients, we don't get taught how to check in with our thoughts. We don't take that time to pause. We don't take that time to reflect and listen to what we're telling ourselves. And we don't have to believe every every thought we have, many of them we shouldn't be saying out loud anyway. So we certainly shouldn't be saying them out loud to ourselves internally either, because they're not always true. And because we don't challenge them, they become gospel inside our mind, and we start believing them, and that then starts that cycle that can really do us damage. Particularly if we keep repeating, like you say, it's this little hamster that's going round saying, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fail, or whatever that negative narrative is.
And there's a lot of entrepreneurs that suffer from imposter syndrome, knowing that, coulda, shoulda, woulda, all of these things are elements that we all have experienced at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
And so the big goal for someone working with you, I have to believe that it's really about how we create strategies to diminish those voices in our head that reduce our life, and amplify the voices in our head that amplify and bring out the best in us.
Absolutely, and you're spot on there, because this is all about helping to turn down that volume of negativity and turn up the volume of positive self-talk. And it's not to say that we don't need to tweak the negativity sometimes, because we need that negative mindset, because that helps us survive. So it needs to be there, but we need to turn it down quite a lot often, because we've had it ramped up too high, and it's drowned out all the positive things that are happening in our lives, because of a whole, like a beatbox of negativity
and that's
on
the
in
reality side of the equation, because you have the fantasy, okay, I'm future tripping over something that might not happen, but the reality is whatever happens to be right now, right here in front of us. And so we have to, I think we have to really measure our self-talk and monitor how we're feeling about things. And one of the tools that I've always used to get me out of a slump or a depression or just stuck is gratitude. It's like, okay, things are okay. I'm I have so much to be grateful for. Let's focus on that for a little bit. So I don't know if that fits into the conversation or not, but it's really been a powerful tool.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, if when I talk about the 5 pillars of brain health, we say, let's look at the facts, which helps us focus in on the reality rather than the fantasy of what we think is happening. And the 5 pillars are remembered by the mnemonic facts. So the first pillar is feelings, which is our feelings pretty much drive everything. Yes, our thoughts drive our feelings, but emotionally, we're emotional beings, and that's what makes us want to do things or stop doing things. So that's the first thing. How am I feeling? And we don't take the time to check in with that often. And then next one, A, is for action. So what actions am I doing that are helping or hurting me from a brain health perspective, and associate behaviors that become embedded, which is multiple actions that become a behavior. What connections do I have to myself? That's C, connections to myself and those around me. And that's been vitally important, as we know, during this pandemic, is looking for alternative ways of connecting with people, not just the physical connection. And then T is the thoughts. So what thoughts am I listening to? What clarity of thought do I have in my mind? Are the thoughts that I'm listening to serving me? Are they helping or hurting me? And how can I improve that mental clarity that I need to live my mission, to connect to my core values, to my purpose, my values and beliefs? And then finally, the one that we often pay no attention to is our surroundings. How are my surroundings? That's the S. How are my surroundings influencing my behaviors, my feelings, my actions, my thoughts, and my connection to myself and my connection to others? And how can I optimize those? So that's looking at the 5 pillars of brain health, remembered by the mnemonic facts. which is a really good way to start your day, is let's look at the facts.
Yep.
And then you can start doing that self-check and see where you're at.
I love that. I love that. I love the thought process that, for two reasons. One, you can utilize it on a regular basis. And once you learn that process, it gets you the opportunity to get unstuck. You don't have to stay where you are.
No.
You don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah. And the reason why we often stay stuck is we don't do the check-in.
Yeah.
So we just let it run, don't we? just let it run and run and run. And we don't just go, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
There's a hamster in my head going around.
I can actually get off the hamster wheel. I don't have to stay here.
So with that in mind, I'd love to talk about your story of brain health, because I know you've been on quite a journey.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to share with people before you start that journey, is just tell us a little bit about yourself, because we didn't get to that yet. Who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ruth. I'm a creator by nature. I grew up as a musician. I played music professionally for years, and it's one of those things that took an abrupt change in direction in the late 80s, where I fell 3 stories and injured. 2 years of rehab and reconstructive surgeries to get me back on track. And that took me down a path of being a lifelong learner, as I always was, but a lifelong learner in the technology space, in media and advertising and content creation. And I worked for radio, television, broadcast, and in technology as well. So that combination of events allowed me to kind of map out several different activities in my life that have just really been adding up to what I do now. And I run the Pirate broadcast. I have a live stream that has over 500 episodes. I've built systems in the Pirate Syndicate that allows my team to actually produce shows for other individuals. And so all the host has to do is show up, and then, doing live events and hybrid events and things like that.
That's great. And I really want to explore initially your, you kind of skipped over it quite quickly, but I'd love to dive into in a bit more detail, is the fact that you fell 3 stories from a building. Could you just tell us what happened, if you're willing to, what happened in that situation?
Well, I have this way of putting things in perspective in life. And, music was my first love, and I loved music. And my life circumstance was that I wasn't playing music at the time, so I needed a regular job. And so I ended up, through a chain of events, I moved to Portland, Oregon, here in the States, and I was able to get a job at a billboard company doing billboards. And so one fall day, I was out doing billboards, and one was falling off. It was looking pretty ragged. And one of the things that we were asked to do is, hey, if something's falling off and it's not looking good, take it down, because it's just poster paper. And we don't want it dropping on cars or anything like that, causing any damage. So I got up there and I started to tear it down, and I didn't realize that my ladder wasn't all the way connected over the top of the sign, because that's how we hook our ladders. And then we hook our safety equipment to the ladder, which allows us to work more safely. And so when I went to push on the ladder, it came through the paper, and I went off and I grabbed a hold of my ladder. And so I fell and then broke 8 rungs of aluminum ladder with my arm.
Wow.
So my dominant arm, my right arm, it clothesline fracture, shattered my elbow and my wrist, and did some damage. A knee and a few other injuries. And so it was really one of those events that took place that, okay, now it's going to be 2 years of rehab, reconstruction, and, making sure that I can actually move and do and achieve
Mhm.
other things. And so it was a journey, and
Mhm.
it was a journey, and it was, I had a choice at that point in time. It's like, okay, I've lost my previous identity, so I either can sit in a puddle of despair and be despondent about it, or I can accept the circumstance, the reality, and
Mhm.
I can move forward and rediscover what value and what gift, because I believed that I survived for a reason. I
Mm.
wasn't sure what the reason was. I just knew, hey, if I survive this, which I'd survived several episodes in previously, and so it's like, I'm here for a reason. Somebody wants me to be around, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this opportunity to actually discover what it is I need to do. So I started a
Wow.
family, and went on to be a safety director for the company. Saved a
Mhm.
few lives, saved a few more lives.
Wow.
Taught people CPR. I became a firefighter and an
Mhm.
EMT, and saved a few people. And
Wow.
that led me to, and the company that I fell from hired me back. So I had a 15-year career in advertising and radio and television as well. So,
Wow.
um,
And
yeah.
I'm really curious because you mentioned when you fell, you lost your identity. Could you expand on that a bit more? What aspects of your identity did you physically or emotionally or spiritually or cognitively, mentally feel you lost?
Yeah. That's a great point, and thank you for that question. It's a great question. And up until that point, I had started playing music professionally
Mhm.
since I was 16. I was playing clubs and bars, and I toured on the road, and everything I did, all of the activities in my life, and all of the interest that I had was directed at being a musician. I was a drummer,
Mhm. You're a
and so
drummer.
I was a drummer, and at that point in time, I had just left one of the bands that I was in touring, because I was, I needed a break from the road, and so I was kind of wandering around. I was married at the time, and
Mhm.
things weren't going all that great, and so uh, I had to decide. It's like, okay, well, that's probably not going to be my future if my arm doesn't work, because every day they were talking about, well, we may have to amputate your arm. Every surgery would be,
Right.
hey, if we can't save this, we're going to have to amputate. And I got staph infection. I got really sick. I lost a ton of
Mhm.
weight, and it wasn't a very good time. And so I made a decision. It's like, okay, that's that life. I'm going to have to change the way I see it and perceive it, and work through that. And
Mhm.
up until now, I'm still a musician. I'm just not a drummer playing out live gigs and touring. So,
Mhm.
uh, and that's what transferred the interest in having a family.
Right.
And that's when my first son was born. Is when I was
Wow.
working through this transition of who I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm here, and who do I
Yeah.
serve now.
And talk. Could you talk me through? Obviously, you falling 3 stories is a pretty significant trauma, not
Mhm.
just physically, but from a brain perspective. In terms of the potential damage you could have done or have done to your brain. Um, could you tell me what you noticed was different about yourself other than your physical injuries? Did you notice any shift cognitively, emotionally? Did you notice any change in your creativity, in your ability to move? Was there any noticeable change following your trauma? that you're aware of?
There was huge change. And I did in fact go through periods of uncertainty, whereas before I was, playing music was the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had to think through that, it was pretty challenging there for a while. And then every time they would take me into surgery, it would be really hard because I wouldn't know if I would have an arm or not, or,
Mm-hmm.
And the mental process of, I remember one time one of the doctors said, "You'll probably never be able to scratch the back of your head." And I said, "That's not my reality. I am not that. I'm refused to accept that." And I did refuse to accept that. And I actually became, that's what it blows people's mind, is what you set your mind out to do is what you have limits of physical nature. I'm not going to play NBA basketball, but the reality is that there are things that we can do, even with the physical restraints we may have from a reality perspective. But I actually went out. We bought this piece of property, and it's a side story, and it was a horrible place. And we bought this. We were able to buy this piece of property, and we had animals. We had horses. My wife is an animal lover from day one, and so we bought this property, and we had a trailer. It was a single wide trailer. And it had been a rental place, and there were tons of trash all over. And it's like, okay, we got to clean this up. So here I am, going in and out of surgery and doing this work. Well, we had, wintertime. It came, we decided it was built for a place for a wood stove. So the fire inspector came over because we had to have it inspected for the insurance. And he said, "Well, you should probably consider joining the volunteer firefighters." And here I am in a cast and everything. And I said, "Okay, I'll join if it helps me get my fireplace installed." And so I became a firefighter and an EMT and volunteered for a number of years. And I was actually second in my class, even with my arm the way it was. And so we have this condition that you can't do that. And reality is that you can do a lot more than you think you can.
Yeah. And what kept you going mentally during that rehabilitation period? Because you said it was 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it that kept your fire burning inside? What was it that helped you get through?
Hope for a better future. I focused on what was potentially out there. I'm the eternal optimist. I look at the sunshine and look at the clouds and say, well, there's sunshine on the other side. And the reality is that we all have a choice, and the alternative wasn't a good one.
Yeah.
So, talking about my first son, he was born during this time. So that gave me hope. That gave me future. That gave me a place to put my energy and say, I have to be the person I need to be this young son's future. It's like, I have to build something. I can't sit here and wallow in pity. I can't sit here and wallow in pity and, set the example of that. So I have to, do something else. And that's what I chose to do.
And I think that's, it's clear that you had a real sense of purpose, which goes back to the spiritual well-being element of the 4 quadrants of well-being, is that spiritual purpose that you knew you needed to fulfill. And that's what pushed you through. And was there a time at all through that you felt you lost that sense of purpose through that recovery period?
Oh, several times,
Mm-hmm.
several times, Dr. Ruth. And I'm not going to lie. It was some of the most challenging days of my life in knowing that, um, I have to get on an IV every 45 minutes or so. And I got to go get tested to make sure that I'm not going blind or losing a kidney or liver because of the toxins that they had to fill me up with because of my infections. And, getting to start to feel better and then have to go back in to do more surgeries to move tendons around and muscles around to get any functionality. And there were a lot of days that were challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna lie. And the only thing that, it was hope for the future. That's what I had to place it on, because it wasn't today. It was the pain I had and the trauma. And, 2 days after surgery, I would go back into rehab and rehabilitation and start moving, muscles around and moving my fingers and my arm and making sure that I had to keep things mobile. Otherwise, the scar tissue would just, eliminate all of the progress that we've made.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a constant 2 years of pain. It was
Mm-hmm.
2 years of constant pain. And so there's some days that it drains you. There's some days that it's like, why am I doing this? Just get it over with. And then you look at, a young child and you're thinking, okay, it's worth it. I got to do something else, hope for the future. And
I think that's really important to cling on to that hope, because there's always hope for us to build a better future, irrespective of how dark it can be. And I'm really interested to know, because this is all about brain health, what support did you get to rehabilitate your brain and strengthen your resilience during that time with the physical rehabilitation? Did you get the cognitive rehabilitation to improve your brain when you had the major accident, or was it very much more focused on the physical aspect and less on the cognitive?
That's a great question. The primary goal was to save my arm and repair it. The secondary application, though, was because I wasn't sure that the company that I was working for previously was going to bring me back and make me a safety director, because I had experience. That wasn't even on the radar. And so what I did was I started doing, reading, different careers, different choices I had, looking at options. I grew up in commercial construction, and mom was in real estate, and I was able to talk to people, and I had started businesses before, and side projects and things like that. So I put a lot of energy in searching and getting feedback from people that had done other things and started other journeys, and taken some classes or taking courses on where my personality would fit in. It's like, okay, it's like job hunting, essentially, is what it was. And that process really kind of built a lot of confidence in me to be able to get out and show myself that I still have value. I still have a purpose. I still have a lot of things. I have a gift. I have a message. I have something that I can offer the world. And so that was really a mindset that I had to embed on a regular basis and remind myself, just like, the balance we were talking about, the balance of, okay, pity or purpose, which one do you want? Faith and fear require the same identity. You have an identity of faith and fear, and one causes you to stop and one causes you to go, yet they both have you. They require you to believe in something that doesn't that isn't right in front of you.
Yeah. But ultimately, it sounds to me that you had to do the work on your mindset. You had to do the work to rehabilitate your brain, whereas you externally got the support to rehabilitate your arm. But we often forget that there's major trauma that we can have in our brain as well as other parts of our body, especially when we fall 3 stories, can have a huge impact on our brain health, not just in terms of the mental health aspect, but did you notice any change in your ability to remember anything? Did you notice a shift in your creativity? Did you notice any changes in your mood at all during that period of time? Did you have swings and roundabouts of mood, or?
Oh yeah. In fact, during this time, I lost my cousin,
Wow.
who drowned. He was my same age. We grew up together, really close. And I just remember being so devastated by that. And thinking back, because I had lost a younger sister in a horseback riding accident when she was 15 that happened long before that. And just all of this emotion, my emotions were really sensitive to loss and grief. And there's sometimes, Dr. Ruth, that I don't even know if I've allowed the grieving process to complete in some of the trauma that I've had in my life. I've lost 2 sisters and a son, and dad passed away last year, and there's still some things that are like really, it's a process, and
it is.
And I've given myself permission to allow the process to go on, to where it needs to go. And so that's why I'm so adamant about, kindness is cool and smiles are free, is this idea that we have to make a choice. And sometimes it's not an easy choice. Sometimes it's not the simple thing. It's not the easy way. And it's just, I just want to help more people see that they have value.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that, because obviously I can hear it in your voice that there's still a lot of grief that you're working through. So thank you for sharing. And I think grief is different for everybody, isn't it? I lost my dad 2 years ago, and it's hard when you lose a parent, but it's even harder when you've got layers of trauma that relates to losing people in your life, which is the situation you have. And what we find from a brain health perspective is our brain becomes more vulnerable to those types of events, because the landscape in our mind changes, and we become more sensitive. It's like we become more electric shocks we have, the more sensitive we become. So it's a similar situation when we experience a lot of similar trauma. We become emotionally charged associated with that, and it ties back to the first experience, and then the trauma stack. So it's really important that we do take the time to allow our emotions to run their course, and to let the emotion out, to allow us to work through the grieving process, in the same way that we work through getting support if we break your arm, is to get the support to help us heal from the trauma that we experience, whether that's losing somebody or someone or something. Is that we go through that healing process too, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to see the way through to the other side.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I know when I lost my son, I mean, I was devastated, because I spent the first year of his life, holding him and being around him, and, catering to his every need, when he was just a youngster. And you know, it was a challenging time. And, you know, that was a challenging time when he was just a baby. I mean, I was in rehab, and somehow we managed to purchase a property, and yeah, it wasn't much, but it was home, and we made a home out of it. And growing up, it was always great to be able to, you know, spend time with the boys, and you know, get out on the farm, and, you know, work on the tractor and things like that. And the reality is that, you know, he never, I don't think he understood what I did, but he wanted my life to be easier. And I worked in and out of corporations in some of the things. So we used to have these deep conversations about, Dad, why don't, because I'm an entrepreneur, and he saw that as being a challenging position where I could just go get a job and it would be much easier. And he was actually in the union. He was a pipe fitter, and he says, when I clock out, I don't have to think about anything.
Yeah.
So we had that dynamic, and I'm just so, you know, it's devastating to lose a child. I would not wish that on anyone. And at the same time, I'm so blessed and fortunate, and I feel that the time I got to spend with my son was a gift. You know, at the same time, and I know that may not make sense to some people. However, if I focus on, you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda, it takes me down a much darker hole, and I don't necessarily like the outcome that I could see. You know, I've battled depression, and I know what it's like to feel like there's no other answer, there's no other possibility, there's no other outcomes that look in, you know, even remotely possible. And so having been there allows me to see the lighter side and say, this thing happened. It's not what we would want. It's not the outcome that I would ever wish on anyone. However, this is my circumstance, and I'm going to have to process it and deal with it. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him. And you know, there's a long time that I was worried about my other son, that you know, his perspective on life was really challenging. You know, his best friend and his brother just left. And so, you know, it's still not every day's, you know, rainbows and unicorns. However, we have to make a choice. And that's the difference between allowing the chatter in our brain control our outcomes versus our logic and our thought and our heart to say, you know, love stronger, love more, you know, be the best you can and show up for other people. And it's really hard to be depressed when you're helping somebody else.
Yeah. And really thank you for sharing that, because I think it's really important that people who are going through a difficult period of time, who may have lost a child, know that there's always hope on the other side, and that you can get through it. What would you say to anyone that is struggling as a parent at the moment, who may have recently lost their child to natural causes or death by suicide?
Yeah, I know that even though it will never go away, and you can't necessarily put it out of your mind and dismiss it as a statistic in the newspaper, on the news, or anything like that, because it's you, it's real. Acknowledge the feeling that you have, and recognize that there's a reason that you need to move forward. There's a reason that you need to continue to heal and share that information and help one person, help a few people. You know, I've had people come to me that were in dire straits, and I've been able to talk them out of things, and it's only because of my experience of being able to know what it feels like, know how they experience it, to be able to speak to that directly and help somebody else that's in danger. And there's
Thank
really
you.
Go ahead.
Go on, sorry, you carry on.
And I was just going to say, so it goes back to that element that we talked about at the beginning. Have hope that there is purpose in this experience and how you can turn it around to be something that leaves a positive impact in the world rather than another statistic.
Yeah. And I think that's really important that we focus on that, isn't it? Because we never know when our time is going to be up. We don't, we may choose to set an end date, but that might not be the case anyway. And we never know personally what the last day will be for us. And it's important that we take the time to live each day purposefully as best we can, and to also, if you can't and you're struggling to live it purposefully, is to ask for help, and ask for support if you are in a dark place, and reach out to people, because people have been there, and they know how to get out, because they've managed to climb out themselves, and they'll be able to help you do the same. I know we talked about gratitude. When did you really start that? Because it's such an important practice for people to do, because it's been scientifically proven that when we do gratitude journaling, it enlifts our level of happiness, and it's our mood levels. It's really important for emotional well-being. When did you discover that was a really important practice for you?
Well, it's been reinforced a couple of times. As I mentioned, I have been in the corporate environment, and back in 2002 or thereabouts, I ended up losing my corporate position that I climbed years up to receive. Got to the corporate ladder, and that evaporated along with my marriage. 18 years of marriage and 15 years of employment in the company. And at that point in time, my identity was tied to my work, my life, and everything that went with it. I was a workaholic. I was fatigued. I was living on about 3 to 4 hours of sleep, and
wow.
Providing the best possible outcome for my family, and at the same time killing myself to get there. And I didn't at the time realize what I was doing, because I was so wrapped up in the vision of what it was. And when that took place, I essentially said, I'm no longer going to do this. I'm not going to do this anymore. And so we got divorced. The family stayed on the farm. We had a nice farm at the time, and animals and everything that went along with it. And I took a journey. I took time off. I built a church in Mexico. I went mountain biking and all over the Western United States. I journaled. I went camping. I had to actually, I filled up journals and journals of things that I probably couldn't read right now, because they were written in, emotional turmoil. And I had to unwind and unpack some of the things that, the American dream turned into American nightmare for me. And so at some point in time, I made a decision to say, I have to find a reason, just like I found a reason years before, to refresh my identity.
Yeah.
How can I be of use? How can I be helpful? Because I felt so disposed of. I felt dismissed. I felt disposed of. I felt worthless. My value was just really, I was in an emotional state that was, I was suicidal. And in order to get out of that, the one thing that helped was having gratitude for the things I had right there, right now, every single day. And I had a lot of friends and family that, they gave me space, they gave me patience, and I survived it. And I made a decision to, be a better person. And, the boys and I took a 6,000 mile trip and traveled around mountain biking and camping all over. And the reality is that, that time was filled with some tragedy as well. And it's not one for this story, but the reality is that I found gratitude, and I found that, giving appreciation for all of the things that you have and all of the things that are possible, and just appreciating, the sunshine and the fact that I got a sleeping bag, and it's just, this is the minor things in life. And it really put a new perspective on what I was attempting to achieve, and all the things that I'd given up and lost.
Yeah. And did you feel that you gained that? Because it sounds like your purpose hugely shifted into something that, that reconnection with your family, with your sons, with the traveling, reconnecting with your emotions that you probably put a lid on. To work through it, the physical aspect of your job, and the physical dysfunction that ensued because you won't get enough sleep, and possibly other things were falling over too. So you literally put a lid on all of the elements of your life in the pursuit of a financial or a physical position that then really defined you in a negative way, because once you lost it, you were able to find yourself personally again, and that new you. Does that sound?
Yeah. I mean, it's like dancing in an avalanche. It's like, the whole world is coming down on you, and you're just out there and you're saying, okay, what do I do next? And the reality is that, I'm going to go back to this because I really believe it, and I've lived it for years, is that we all have a gift. We all have a message, and there's a reason we are here. And I've practiced that my entire life, essentially, and saying, okay, well, what is it that I am supposed to bring to the planet here? What is it that I'm supposed to bring to the world? And I've always been one that has always, had people come to me and say, what do I do here? How do I fix this? The strong one, the one that has the answers, the one that could figure it out, the systems and solutions and everything that go along with that. And so I just took that, I took that same course with myself. It's like, okay, what would I do if I were on the outside looking in? And, it's not that I'm not grieving. It's not that I don't have pain. It's not that I don't have challenging moments. It's that I have to allow the circumstance that I'm actually in help me and guide me through the chatter that's in my head that says, go do something else. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that, balance and choice is really the guide that has taken me from, devastation to defining who I am.
And what would you describe who you are now? What are your core values now for you, and your sort of mission for you now, where you are today?
I'm a giver. I'm a helper. There's a saying that look for the helpers. I'm a helper. I'm somebody that can guide you and help you see some of the things you might not be able to see, even though I'm still challenged by that. Sometimes I can't see things myself. I can see things in other people. And so I know the mission in my life is to help as many people as I can, and help them, just like doing this live stream. And it's about telling stories. It's about sharing the pain and the success and the process and the challenges that we all face. And the biggest obstacle in our life is that we feel like it's alone. It's like we're the only ones going through this. And the reality is it's no, you're not. We all have to go through some level of challenge in our life to define who we are, to actually develop who we become. So if I can add and enhance anyone's world that allows them to believe in themselves enough to actually share their story and actually share their message, even on a small scale, if you can actually get that out, let's make it matter, because we all matter. We all have a place in this world. We all have a gift that we can actually share with somebody. And if somebody's out there and they can actually listen to what you have to say and say, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. I can get through this. I can survive this. I mean, the suicide rate is insane right now. It's just out of control.
Yeah.
The challenges we're facing in the world today are exacerbated by the fact that we have access to information 24/7, 365. There's so much information coming through, and it increasingly requires us to be very selective on what we bring into our world. You know, it's like, okay, how much garbage do you want to sort through before you find a golden nugget, right?
And I think
people like yourself, Dr. Ruth, are the light that I want to shine on, because you're doing great work. You're doing some things that are important to society. They're important to the world. And so all the gratitude in the world for you being here.
Oh, Russ, thank you so much. I think I really appreciate that feedback, and also your wisdom and your insights in the importance of having that courage and that confidence, and knowing that there is always hope, and knowing that you can get through things, and leveraging what you have and appreciating what you have in the moment to get through that next day, and just taking each day one day at a time. And I think for me, when I went into a very deep, dark place and started having suicidal thoughts myself, gratitude was my go-to, is to being grateful that I get to wake up in the morning. You know, I get to see the sunrise. It's looking for the things that you get to do that other people don't have the privilege to do or to see or to experience. Or, you know, I get to have a shower. There's so many things that we have that we often take for granted. Like you said, I've got a sleeping bag. You know, some people don't have sleeping bags to sleep in. You know, and it's just appreciating the simple things in life, and getting back to the basics of what our fundamental needs are, and appreciating those first and foremost. Is that we, grateful that we have a roof over our heads if we do, but that we have the ability to breathe. And I think I really resonate with the situation that people are in today in terms of this fast-paced society. Everybody feels that they're constantly on. We're a massive overwhelm in terms of the digital space now. The need to consume so much content is battering us, psychologically. And I think sometimes people, reflecting back on your story with your high octane work environment that suddenly came to a massive stop, is that we don't give ourselves that permission to breathe. And when we are forced to breathe, as you were from a workplace perspective, it's a suddenly a gasp, and it's like, oh gosh, what do I do now? Or you suddenly realize that you haven't been giving yourself permission to do anything from a psychological perspective, or emotionally, spiritually, mentally, or physically, in a way that really serves you. And I think we as a race, as a human race, need to to give ourselves that permission to take the time out, take that 5 minutes and just do the check-in with ourselves and say, okay, let's just like going back to the start of our conversation, let's look at the facts, let's look at the reality of the situation that we're in now. How am I feeling? What am I doing? How am I connecting with me and with other people? What am I thinking? What thoughts am I listening to? Do I need to be listening to them? Are they really true? How can I challenge them and take back control of that self-talk that goes on inside my head? And how can I make the best use of my surroundings, which you talked about, you know, going on your journey? How can I use nature to ground me and help me connect with the best of me again? So I'd love.
It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, and in all of those 5 elements, which of the, you know, feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and surroundings, which elements do you feel that you may be, and this is a bit, you don't have to answer this, but I'm really interested to know, that maybe you've not paid too much attention to, but you could pay more attention to going forward?
Oh, wow. You put me on. You didn't say there was going to be a test here, so.
Oh no, it's not a test. It's just, I'm just curious. It's a curiosity. Get curious, not furious, is what we say with everything in life. So
I would have to say I've limited my surroundings right now, and it's by choice. You know, I'm caring for mom here in Arizona, and we have a great life, and we're very close family, and my sister's here as well, so I'm not doing it by myself. And I've always enjoyed travel. I've enjoyed getting out, going more, and that's one of the things that I would continue to pursue. You know, current circumstances are not necessarily ideal for that. However, that's one thing that has always been able to shift my mindset, my attitude, is when I start feeling stuck or when I start feeling constrained, I will change my environment. I will do something else. I will go somewhere. I'll take a break and do something. And I've done it to a certain extent. However, that's probably one area that is really been limited in my ability to achieve right now.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And I think I'm really pleased you said that, because so many people don't think about the impact that their environment can have on their brain health, and they're all interconnected. And it's so important we think about in the context of how we can show up as our best self and take that time out to really connect with things that will serve us. Yeah,
it's important.
And it really is, and it's not really talked about that much. It's very much, you know, a focus on us. And we can't forget how our environment shapes us, and it really does in so many ways. So and I'd love to know, you know, given the theme that we've had talking about grief a lot, and that you've experienced, what one piece of advice would you give someone who is struggling with grief right now, who's lost a loved one recently? What would your one piece of advice be to somebody?
My advice is acknowledge the feelings you have. They're real. They're absolutely exactly what needs to happen right now, and acknowledge them, recognize them, and then, you know, attempt to move forward in your life. You know, if we stay stuck where we are, then it's counterproductive. You know, it's not.
I think
it's not anything we need to do.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, because so many people bury them, and it's so important for us to acknowledge that we are experiencing those emotions and to let them run their course. and to find mechanisms to release them in a constructive rather than a destructive manner, which havening is a great approach, which is what I do, and I know Chris Ross has received some havening, and there's lots of other techniques, hypnotherapy, deep breathing, gratitude journaling is what you've been doing yourself as well, and so many other approaches as to get that support to work through those emotions and not put a lid on them, because those can come back and bite you later on in life. Russ, I think we could talk for days, you know. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. How can people get hold of you? What's the best way for people to reach out and get support from yourself in all the amazing work that you do to help others?
Well, anytime you can type in, if you want to talk to me, if you want to schedule some time, bookruss.com is a great place. Pirate Syndicate, I do a lot of work over there. I have courses and I help people produce their shows and create content. And I do the Pirate broadcast on a regular basis, so it's always out there. And Russ Johns, you just type in Russ Johns or Pirate broadcast, and you'll track me down. I'm on all socials and available to start a conversation with you.
Yeah, and make sure you check Russ out, because kindness is cool and smiles are free, and you have plenty of those, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to continue our conversation in the future.
It's been an honor and a privilege, Dr. Ruth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this episode and leave a review on my website or on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for opportunities to optimize your brain health or unchain your pain from a past trauma, make sure you visit my website www.ruthmaryallen.com and use the code podcast10 at checkout to get 10% off all programs. And always remember, you are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. You have the power to unchain your pain and optimize your brain power and performance so that you can win back energy and time doing what you love.
Each episode of Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain with Dr. Ruth Allan is for educational and demonstration purposes only. The information shared in each episode should not be interpreted as medical advice. This episode should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical or physical condition. Do not use this episode to avoid going to your healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with a trusted healthcare professional before doing anything contained in this episode. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact www.ruthmaryallen.com/connect.